Welcome to Vitalify Unplugged. You're listening to your hosts, Gree and Steph.
In this podcast, we talk about everything health and well-being, science and technology, and ancient wisdom.
This is for the quirky humans navigating the messy middle, looking for the path to true vitality.
It's for the curious minds and tired bodies looking for clarity, energy, and inspiration that works your way.
Welcome back to Vitalify Unplugged.
Hello, it's your friend Gree, intuitive AI and tech whisperer, 60 plus full throttle and talk energy bunny, chasing fun, fairness, and freedom.
And I'm Steph, holistic nurse, soulful scribbler, magnetic mama, dancing through midlife with truth, magic, and messy, wild-hearted freedom. Today, we're joined by Caroline Bellenger, an award-winning speaker, wellbeing and leadership strategist, and someone who works at the intersection of emotional intelligence, human performance, and courageous leadership. And what we love about Caroline's work is that she brings well-being out of that wellness bubble and brings it into real life, into leadership, relationships, culture, and the everyday pressure people are carrying. She speaks with honesty about what it takes to stay human in a world that often rewards burnout, performance, and disconnection. So, Caroline, before we dive in, we'd love to hear in your own words who you are and what experiences shaped the way you think about stress, safety, and being a human in high pressure spaces.
Well, look, this is an area of life I just love, and it's come through a lot of challenges that I've been able to prioritize, my understanding of well-being and wellness and reducing stress. Briefly, I had a history of addiction and mental illness caused partly through childhood trauma. I got sober 16 years ago, and keeping sober and managing my mental health became a mind-body connection method. So intertwine that into all my different things I've done since then. I keep coming back to that balance of mind and body when it comes to well-being. And there's so much stuff out there. But what I'm going to love to talk about today is it's actually really simple. And I think we live in a society that loves to overcomplicate everything.
Sure does. Yes.
Now, I wonder, Caroline, was there a moment that changed how you understood what well-being really is?
Yes. Look, I don't think anything in life, like people ask me about getting sober, there wasn't really a moment. I think sometimes in life it's a combination of moments that make the change. But definitely when I got sober and realized that connection between mind and body, I became a PT at 47 and then opened a gym, thinking, I just wanted to share this with everyone, especially women, on how good you feel when you just move your body. And I got into this world of shred diets, extreme exercise, supplements, everything. And what I saw was people who weren't what I consider in the wellbeing so happy. They were stressed. They were more stressed about getting healthy than what they were before they were trying to get healthy. So it just added more pressure onto them. So through my own experience and coaching a lot of women through that, I started to understand that it comes down to how we see ourselves more so than anything we do. It's how because I had a thing in the gym even that it was like 80% inner work, 20% everything else.
Yeah.
Because when you start liking yourself, to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
You make healthier choices. And that's the crazy part. It doesn't work the other way. Otherwise, we're always searching.
Yeah.
And then we're never happy.
So true. So true. Especially for women,
Yeah.
I would say. Now, on Vitalify Unplugged, we talk about wealth in a much broader sense than money, for example. So when you hear the word wealth, what does it mean to you?
Wealth for me is definitely health. And I've just been through a very traumatic 2 years in business. And it's only made me realize even more how important health is. Because if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. We literally have our health, and yet people continually put their health as a second, third, fourth, fifth, not a priority. So wealth for me is all around well-being and health without fail. I want nice things, but I go being healthy, being energetic, being having vitality, enjoying what you do is where the money wealth comes in anyway.
Yeah. I have a background in health promotion, education, and nursing, but one of the things that what you're saying that resonates with me is prevention is better than cure, and in trying to prevent people from being unhealthy, helping people understand that health is wealth. Is there's this massive barrier. So this conversation feels very relevant to what we're trying to expand people's thinking on wealth. So I fully resonate with that completely. It's really inspiring to hear that, because that's something I'm very passionate about. So, but today, sorry, I deviate.
No,
I
I
keep
totally
back on track.
No, I totally relate, and we need to talk about more. And that's where, as I said earlier, the simplicity comes in, because the barrier for most people is it's too complicated. So
And
they
it doesn't have to
start
be.
lots of things to be healthier, then they fail because it's too hard. And then they go back into I'm not good enough, all that, self-limiting beliefs. And then it's harder to start. Each time that happens, it's harder to start. So keep it simple.
So I guess that kind of leads into our what we would love to explore more with you around nervous system regulation, that emotional resilience, and the idea that safety is fundamental to contributing to a wealthy life, because so many women are navigating those pressures along with hormonal shifts, emotional load, constant adaptation, and blaming themselves for how their body responds when it doesn't do it the way they want it to, or it is on TikTok or on Instagram or whatever they're consuming. So this conversation is really about having adding a different lens, so that the symptoms are information and safety matters, and that learning to regulate is not weakness, it's wisdom. So I feel like that's what we'd love to delve in with you more.
And I think
as we know, pets, best way to reduce your health. Unless there are Siamese like this who's very demanding, sometimes not so relaxing around
needy.
Her, but generally, animals. Look, on that, I think it's really important to understand that everyone is different. And what works for some people doesn't work for some people, and that's okay. So I know from my experience, even sober, even with all the toolbox and everything I have, I still have an addictive personality type. I still am more on the anxious side than the I'm a chill person type of side. And I do meditation every day. Not very I'm going to say not very well in the technical sense of what we're, and this is what I'm saying. I still do it, even though my brain is going at 100 miles an hour while I'm trying to do my 10-minute meditation.
Welcome to the neurospicy world.
So I still do my 10-minute meditation every day. Because that's still better than not doing it at all. And it does reduce. So, and again, I think it's really important. I'm a big believer, try everything. Just, if that doesn't work, go try something else. So I love to run. A big one for me. That's been a bit harder lately. Now, ocean swimming's a big one for me. Find what And again, I bring it back to what makes you feel happy? What makes you feel relaxed? People will say, like, and I've lost family members to skin cancer. So, like, this probably doesn't sound great. Don't go out in the sun and get sunburned. My happiest place
In the sun.
is lying on a beach in the sun doing nothing. So as long as I'm not burning myself to a crisp, that's how I regulate my nervous system, because that's the one thing I know that's going to, make me calm. And I get skin cancer checks all the time. And my doctor is amazing, because she used to say to me all the time that the stress is what will cause my skin cancers before the sun.
Yeah.
Because anytime we're stressed, we're putting pressure on our immune system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when our immune system isn't at the best it can run, that's when we get sick.
It's so true.
That's when we, have diseases, all of that. So I always keep coming back to why being happy and genuinely happy in what you're doing has such an incredibly beneficial impact on your well-being and your nervous system and everything. So, finding what you love, and, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but, like, not giving a fuck what anyone else thinks about it. Just do what makes you happy.
Swear away, I say.
Recognizing that that we're all different, and that what makes us tick is different. It's like, I mean, I do my exercise at home. I do my little sort of qigong routine and a little sort of, strengthening exercise. And it might not be, I'm not losing the weight I want to, but I still feel good in my body and things like that. But recognizing that, and we also know that a lot of women experience stress as a personal failing. They think, why can't I cope? Why am I so reactive? What's wrong with me? So why do stress responses so quickly become a story about inadequacy?
Okay, so I would even go further in that women have been sold the myth that when they're doing it all, like, if you get a mum who's looking after a kid, she's working, she's taking care of the house, she's on the PNC, she's doing all this other amazing stuff, she will get accolades. Yay, go you. So therefore, there's guilt. And I'm going to say, like, the only emotion that I will say is a wasted emotion is guilt, because it doesn't benefit in any way. So it's more around a society that tells women that they should be under pressure and stress. And if they're not succeeding at something. So we carry it, and then a lot of women will carry it as a badge of honor. Like, I'm doing all this. And
definitely my generation.
But that's how they've been conditioned. So I'm all about going, if you feel stressed, it's not actually of benefit to anyone. And, and that's my thing when I say about self-care. Like, my son, when he was about 11, and this is one of the lessons I learned, one day I was like in usual mum mode, and, and it's not saying to mums you have to be calm all the time, because I think that's like an impossibility. And it's okay to yell at your kids sometimes when you're frustrated.
Absolutely.
So that's another thing for mums, don't get stressed about that. You're not a bad mother if you lose it every now and again. Like, that's just life. That's normal. That's, part of the pressure. But he said to me one day, "Hey, Mum, why don't you go for a run?" And I just sort of went, and sort of like copped me, and I went, "Oh, okay." So I said, "So, like, why am I nicer when I run?" And he said, "Yes."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said yes. And I went, well, yeah. So I learned then it's really important when I'm stressed to go and do something that makes me feel better, and then come back and deal with people that I'm frustrated with. Because it's when I'm a better version of me, it benefits everyone. So therefore, we have to stop thinking of self-care as like this thing we do for ourselves, and go, I'm spreading the joy to all of you every time I go and do self-care.
And that's a process, right? Because like you were saying before, we've kind of been conditioned.
Yes.
So to uncondition that that constant repetitive thinking is a process. Like, it's not, you don't just wake up and go, right.
No.
I am.
No, and I think it's really hard, especially for women, because, there are a lot of responsibilities that,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's not as simple as saying, I don't want to do that today. Some things
No.
just have to
Yeah.
get done.
Yeah.
So, and that, I guess that's where the resilience part comes in.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so when I could always say resilience is doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you need to do it
Yeah.
for whatever outcome. And that builds on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, taking the time when you can to then breathe and center yourself as best you can with whatever method works for you, other than
Yeah.
alcohol. Please don't use alcohol as that method.
Kind of, you kind of just sort of reminded me of something from episode 1 with Suzanne, which was, does it serve me? Does it
Yeah.
serve the situation and the people around me? Does it serve the better community? Which is exactly what you were saying about spreading the joy to the wider community. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's a thread here. So,
Yes, yeah, that's great. And
Yeah.
I tell people that, like, if I'm going to do
Yeah.
something, I say,
Yeah.
I'm going to go do this and go to the beach for a couple of hours, because then I'll be a better me for you. So you
Yeah.
just hang in
Yeah.
there and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. Well, and I think because women are very capable, and
Yes.
but that sense of self-judgment can be savage, because they are the one who has to keep going to keep
Yes.
things ticking along. So what do you wish people understood more about stress that would soften that story straight away? Like, when that self-judgment creeps in, like, what do you sort of suggest to people around that?
Yeah, and I just go, we're human. I always bring it back to, like, the human condition. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. It's okay. I say, my life, one meltdown at a time. I think we need to normalize that we fail, normalize that we're not perfect, normalize that we have bad days. Because to me, that's the human condition. And that's
Yeah.
just normal.
Yeah.
It's, and I feel like once you have more acceptance around that, you can then find solutions to not stay there. But if we deny it or berate it or judge it, we actually hold on to it, and then it just builds greater. And learning, I guess, in that is to, once you're okay with it yourself, like I said, now I'm okay. Had to go and do something with my mum and son, like renovating his house. And I was in like a really stressed mode, and, and same, like I've been really stressed, and I acknowledge that and I know that. So when we got to the place, they started talking about something, and it was, when you have those conversations and when you're stressed, you're just like, it's just tension, right?
Yeah.
And I just went, stop. I said, I don't want to know. I actually don't want to know. I said, I'm feeling really cranky today and I'm really highly strung. I'll leave that with you. I'm going to go paint doors by myself. So I'm just warning you, if I bite your head off today, you're pre-warned. So, all right.
Yeah.
And
It's
go.
not personal.
It's not personal. Yeah. And I think that's it, because, and do you know what? They create so much more trust and respect. Because no one wants to have their head bitten off. And if if you're even in a workplace, if you say to someone, I'm just not having the best day, can you just, like, be mindful of how you speak to me today?
Yeah.
I think that's really, really key. And I'm somebody who actually thrives on stress. I love stress. Like, that really energizes me. But one thing I have noticed, as you kind of get a bit wiser, more mature and things like that, stress in midlife can feel quite different from earlier seasons of life, right? Because you're kind of running out of time. Well, that's my feeling,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on that as well? Like,
Yeah. So for midlife, and look, and we get into, like, the whole perimenopausal, menopausal, like, that traumatized me. And and so I hit perimenopause during COVID, and I was like, honestly, if I had to pick, I think the perimenopause was worse than the COVID. For my mental,
I agree.
for my mental well-being, and I didn't have many of the physical symptoms, except like fatigue. I was just fatigued, so it was just like this exhaustion all the time, which made me crankier. But again, I think it's really important with that for women because, yes, there's hormonal changes. So we're going to be a lot more vulnerable around those hormonal changes, and remembering, bring everything back to when we're stressed, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, or just life, it's not necessarily us, it's our hormones. So it's our hormones. So don't judge yourself on that. Just go like, what can I do to fix my hormones? Always look at behavior rather than self when we're trying to fix a solution for maybe our not so great habits. But at the same time, I would also be very wary of, that whole can't do this because I'm perimenopausal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because then we start telling ourselves the story, and I used to see it in the gym and it'd be like, oh, I've put on weight because I'm in menopause, or I can't do this because I've got menopause, or I can't think straight because I've got menopause. And I go, great, maybe you can't. So find a way to manage it.
Yeah.
Don't live the story because what we think we keep creating.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess that is I guess in those phases, your body is a messenger.
Yes.
But you need to create that safety around it to keep moving through it.
Yes.
Perhaps is that.
Yeah. So like acknowledge that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, because I do a thing I call like limited by labels. I see that a lot where people are limited by these labels and that becomes their identity rather than a condition to acknowledge, like any condition, like any medical condition.
Yeah.
It's like, you could be diabetic, you could have, any type of mental illness. It's still a condition. Do what you need to do to manage that.
Yeah.
And then look for opportunities to still grow and develop and live a happy life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Absolutely. So this episode is called Your Body Isn't Broken, It's Communicating.
Yes.
So when you think about symptoms like anxiety, shutdown, irritability, exhaustion, or overwhelm, what do you think they're often trying to say? Like, what should we
Stop.
Stop.
Just stop.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's when we're in that state, again, I look at that as your body is trying to tell you, you're not happy. And again, I'll bring it back to the simple. If you've got those emotions and you're good at your awareness of how you're feeling and you're tense, irritable, stressed, exhausted, fatigued, that's your body saying you need to make a change. So rather than seeing that as something wrong, see that as an opportunity to go, okay, I get a chance now to make a positive choice for my life where I'm going to feel better.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
And that shift from fix me to listen to me can be massive, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Listen to me. You need
listen
to
me. Yeah.
But,
and it doesn't. And your body. I read that book a little while ago. The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet, but it's on my list.
Highly recommend it. It's around, like I said, for me, the childhood trauma that still sits in my body, and that's where I always say, like when I'm really stressed, say when I go speak on stage, right? And everyone thinks Caroline the confident. Yeah, great. I am, and in my head I'm focused. I know what I need to do as I'm walking. I'm totally calm, done all my setup. As I'm walking up the stage, my amygdala goes, yo, let's go. And my mouth goes dry, my heart starts beating high, and my legs start going crazy. Right? And in my head, my logical conscious brain goes, what the fuck? Like, you're not even, like I'm literally consciously not even concerned about getting up on stage. But that's the amygdala, fight and flight, that's keeping score from all those other memories where he wanted to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So related to that.
Yeah.
So no fear of getting there, and then suddenly everything dries up.
Yeah. And so again, this is where sometimes we have to have those conversations in our head to say that, yep, get it, because you're protecting me, but I'm okay right now and I'm just going to keep going. And that's, I guess, the resilience part, building part of it, rather than going, where people stop and go, oh my God, I can't do this. Because when you do that, you're actually then reinforcing the amygdala to go, oh yeah, see, I was right.
Yeah. Told you so.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, look, like I said, I have a lot of conversations in my head about this.
It's not normal.
Yeah. Someone else, I said that to someone one other day, and they're like, something about, and I said, oh, what do you mean that's not normal? Yeah.
But there is a condition. This is a total segue, nothing on script or anything about it. But I've got a friend. You know how when we say imagine or picture this in your head, right? And we make a picture of a mental picture. Some people can't do that.
That's me. I've got aphantasia.
Oh, you've got it? And that's like so odd to me that you can't. And she had no idea that nobody else could see it, right?
Yes, that was me at 40.
Yeah, she's about 40.
And it was only through a conversation with my son. We were talking about a table, because I remember it clearly. Talking about a table, and he said, oh, just picture it here. And the way he was doing it, and I laughed. I said, oh, you don't really mean picture it? And he's like, yeah.
I do.
And I then had this conversation. I said, like, you actually see it in your head? And he's like, yeah, don't you? I'm like, no.
Isn't it only like 10% of the population or something? Like, it's very low percentage of the population. It's like, wow.
So we're all, again.
Oh, I've read too.
And this is, I would say it's a bit like any type of mental health. Because my son says to me, I'm on the spectrum. And I say, Dale, we're all on the spectrum. And aphantasia memory stuff is the same. It actually, it's not this person can't see, this person can, There's all different levels of it. And like everything, anxiety, all different levels. Depression, all different levels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very few people are immune to everything.
No, I used to work in the Princess Alexandra up in Brisbane in the adult emergency there, and we had a little mental health emergency section, and the beautiful, incredibly wise mental health nurses there used to say to me, because the ED nurses used to have to go up and help do all the clinical stuff, and they used to say to me, we're all on the spectrum, Steph. And I was like, and I would ask them, because I knew they could assess people really quickly, and I'd be like, what spectrum am I on? And they're like, we're not telling you, got to work it out.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, well, that's always and I think that, again, it's that trying to normalize the conversation that there is no normal.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Different kind of normal is the term I've always used. We're all same and different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
so I think, again, like coming back to that whole regulation of that, I always say awareness is your first step.
Yeah.
And awareness, try and be aware of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And then understand, your body. Like, start listening to your body. It's like me, because I do a lot of exercise. Sometimes I'll have a niggle. And as we get older, I call them niggles, right? So sometimes I have to go, is that niggle an injury, or is it just a niggle? Do I still go for a run today? Do I still go do this? And the more we can become conscious of our body and those feelings we have inside our body, whether it's like, that little butterfly feeling in the gut that comes first, or, the dry mouth in your certain situations. Once you start picking up on those cues, you can start understanding how they link to your own values, your limiting beliefs, your fears, and all, and then you can start working on them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that kind of leads into our next question, which is, if people don't listen to those signals and they ignore them for too long, like, what have you seen and observed in people that you work with?
They'll end up in hospital or dead. Okay, so we need to.
Yeah. Good point.
and this is the thing, like, they'll just end up. I think what happens is if we don't take action sooner rather than later, sometimes we just start snowballing in a negative direction,
Yeah.
right? And then it makes it, and often that makes it harder to get out of because it becomes,
Right.
so overwhelming. And
Yeah.
once you get to that really overwhelmed stage, it's hard to claw your way back. Not
Yeah.
impossible,
Yeah.
but much harder. So
Yeah.
I think the sooner we can learn our little personalized body signals and listen to them, then the sooner we take action. And like I said, that might just be a 5-minute walk down the street to reset.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the magic happens in the little moments.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And then that's enough to then start again. Breathing's such a great deep breathing. Box breathing's fantastic. And you can do that for 2 minutes anywhere.
Yeah.
And that completely resets your whole vagus nerve system.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, if we don't, we're going to end up, I would say most diseases, whether it's heart, lungs, liver, skin, come from stress. Or amplified through stress. That's I can't stress hard enough to people that stress is a killer. And even, and I know you said earlier, Greg, because I can be like that, where I've always, and this is my learning in the last 2 years of incredible stress, I've thrived on stress, right? And I feel like I'm at my best and getting things done. But I've also realized that's part of the story I've told myself, because any type of stress causes inflammation.
Yeah.
And inflammation is then what causes disease.
But I guess there's different kinds of stress. So there's eustress and distress, right? So distress can be quite traumatic, whereas there's the natural adrenaline and things like that. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but there's a positive stress factor as well that drives you and amplifies you and things like that. Yeah.
But if you use too much of it, you'll end up with none of it.
Absolutely. Or you lose your brain and it goes out the window, like me when I took myself to the doctor to find out if I had Alzheimer's. It was just menopause, but that's
same but different. Like I said, I go like, I must sound like a bit of a lunatic because my son tells me that, like, when I get dementia, it won't be any different when he has to look after me.
Yeah. But we'll see how we go with that. But I wanted to bring.
That's because when we have conversations, like, I'm always like, I'll go for the 20 conversations in the one conversation. Yeah. And then I'll go, I don't even know what I was talking about.
You're in the right space here. You're fine. This is how we operate.
But I did want to, because we're going to move on to safety regulation and real life and things like that. But I wanted to kind of bring it back to something that you said earlier on, which I think I heard it right, which was it's not about fixing the people, but it's the systems, like for women in particular, that burden, I don't know if that's the right term, but that you carry whether you're a mum or not or whatever, that's that extra thing. It's everybody else in front of you, before you. So having that, addressing the systemic and the systematic things before we start addressing the individuals, making it safe. I think that's really, really important. But I just wanted to bring that back in again as well, because we do mostly talk to women because we're mostly women here. But, I think there's a few men who like to listen to this kind of stuff as well. So over to you, Steph, about the safety and regulation.
So safety as a foundation with real life regulation is kind of a key component to building this idea of well-being and wealth. So one of the core ideas in this episode is that safety is foundational. But when we say that to you, what does that actually feel like in the body, in your experience?
The safety, I would say, like, for me, it's I would call it when you feel centered. When you just like, and everything flows. I think because it plays out, like, you feel centered and then everything else just sort of flows along. Whereas, like, say, when you're in that not safe feeling, it's like, can anything else go wrong?
And then it does.
And then it does. Yeah. And then it does.
Especially if you tell yourself that it will.
Yeah. And I think then it's having the toolbox, because life doesn't always go flow. It's having the toolbox of when it's not flowing, how are you reacting to that? And this is where I would come back to 110% self-responsibility. Yes. Yes. The most freedom and the most empowering thing for my self-worth was when I realized that I was 110% responsible for everything that happened.
And we are, right?
And there's so much calm in that when you can't blame, justify. Like I said, that doesn't condone bad behavior, and it doesn't condone situations that are out of our control and all of that, or, that the world is full of dickheads and narcissists at times. That still exists.
Man,
That still exists very often.
that's a whole different conversation.
But how we respond to them is 110% our problem.
Yes.
Or not problem, however we do it. And so when you start building that up and understanding that, it actually is that safety, because someone could pretty much do anything to me or say anything to my face, and I would probably just smile and go, okay, you do you. And I think that's the power of self-worth in this conversation as well-being.
But
and that comes from understanding my flaws, you know what I mean, and being okay with my flaws, being proud of my strengths, and just sitting at, this is who I am. I've got improvements to make, and I'll dig along at those. But I'm still, my famous saying is, you are enough, just as you are, right here, right now. You don't need to be anything else in this moment.
Honestly, if we can bring it in with some tips for people who are listening as well, because often people think of safety as external, but regulation is such an internal experience, right? So for someone who's listening, who feels wired or flat or emotionally afraid, where do they begin with this self-journey?
Okay, so look, and I would say to people, start building a toolbox, because not everything's going to work in every occasion. Or, if half an hour meditation works for you, that's great, but it might not be so great if you're in the middle of an argument at the time. You might not be able to go, I'll be back in 30 minutes. So having a toolbox, look, exercise, and that's a physiological change, because when we exercise, and whether that's, tennis, walking, whatever, the physiological changes create the happy hormones. So that will change our state. Just dancing,
Yeah, I was going to say dancing.
Dancing's good. It might be for some people journaling. I do a lot of journaling when I'm really need to get stuff out of here. Then in this day and age, I suppose you don't even have to journal. You just record it and get a transcript. But in saying that, journaling is an association still, obviously through evolution, that will change too. But currently, as humans, the connection between writing and our brain is still linked.
Exactly.
Boundaries are probably the biggest thing. Saying no, being okay, saying no to things. Is huge. Not being when it comes to social media, I have an interesting take on that, because that can either create a lot of stress. A lot of people find stress by comparing to other people, reading all the toxic comments, getting toxic comments, whatever. There's a plethora of stuff out there that's not great. So my tip to all those people, if that's impacting you, isn't necessarily don't use it. I love using it, but block and delete what you don't like. So my feed is very inspirational and very, positive, unless it's politics, which I like following anyway, but that's just me. But use your social media like your life. Create what you want in your life. So create your social media so you are inspired by it.
Yeah. 100%.
Hanging around the right people. Oh my God, how often, and whether that's family, friends that you've had for 50 years, hanging around the wrong people, and that's proven in the whole, who the 5 people you spend the most time with type of theories. But yeah, that's really going to impact you.
Yeah.
So, and again, so I guess all of this comes back to what are you doing to create a better life, or and I'm not saying, like, some of these choices are hard to make. For family, sometimes situational people you have to work with. I call it my cone. I put on my cone of silence. It's like I feel like, so when I have to deal with them, I mentally go, oh, I've got to go deal with this person. I'm going to put on my cone of protection.
Yeah.
So while I'm talking to them, like, I have this imaginary barrier that protects me from all their toxic negativity.
Yeah. And that's such a simple but effective way to allow what you need to receive to come in, but also just keeps some imaginary barrier from letting people just spit their fire on you. That's so simple, doesn't cost anything, and you can just create it yourself.
And then all you've got to do, if you're like me, is just make sure that you've got, like, the imaginary zip on your lip as well. They go hand in hand. The imaginary barrier and the imaginary zip work well together.
And our final sort of thing we wanted to touch on today was to stay human, and we're back to the system in our pressure cooked system. So you speak quite powerful about protecting our humanity in systems that reward burnout and disconnection and things. But what does it take to stay human in those environments?
Again, I'm going to come back to self-worth, because when you have worked on yourself and you're okay with yourself, then you can continue to be yourself in pressure cooked environments. And that's about not taking on other people's stuff, not taking on the environments, or walking away from it if that's what you need to do. And I think, a big part of that is people really need to sit down and really work through what they actually want in life. What actually makes them happy? What does success mean to them? And, if you're doing stuff because your parents wanted you to do it, or you think society wants you to do it, or, you've just got caught up in that, you can change that at any time, So
I know, but I think that's a glitch where people get stuck, though. I 100% agree with you. I think that, people that we all have in our lives at some point, that's where they get stuck, and they can, that's, they keep, and they don't see a way out.
No,
but there's always a way out.
Yeah, there's always a solution. And I think that's, again, a story we tell ourselves. And maybe, do a 12-month audit every year. Doesn't have to be around New Year, because that sort of seems to, people don't seem to follow through on that one. Any time of the time. Do audits all the time. Set your monthly goals in all areas of your life, and then check in and go, oh, which way am I going? Is it towards or away from? What do I need to reset? And I guess oh God, we could get really deep on that. It links back to, like, your purpose. Why are you here? What do you want your life? What do you want your headstone to say? Because we're all going to die unless technology gets really good before I get there. I'm hoping, because I've got a lot of things to do.
I don't know if technology is the solution. We need to inject wisdom and humanity into that.
But what kind of person do you want to be? And the reality is, not everyone wants to be a nice person. Like, some people, that's not their goal. Their goal is to go out there and make money and screw over whoever they can in the process to make their $5 million. So you go, and that's okay, because that's them. Yeah. Come back to who do you want to be? What do you want people to remember you as when you're not here?
Yeah, that's really cool. And so then, in places like workplaces or family systems, or even for our leaders, anywhere people feel pressure to perform instead of standing in their truth or telling the truth, what do you think? What do you think they're getting wrong about well-being?
Oh, okay. So, every organisation should just have me in there doing my Lead with Kindness program.
Imagine.
I'm really big on changing the whole narrative around what leadership looks like, and having it built on trust rather than ego. But again, human condition, ego probably is going to win out again. But we can keep trying. But for people, again, value yourself.
Yeah.
So, and it's not always, you don't always have to, stand up to the bully, and you don't always have to do this and say your piece and all that, because there might be, again, because everyone's different. Like that might not work for an introvert. So for an introvert, there might be, I always call it the path of least resistance for you.
Yeah.
What works for you so that you're still happy, protected, and your well-being is, healthy and positive, but you're managing your day-to-day tasks and people that you have to come across. And then, if you're really unhappy in a job and you can't do that, then look at other options. Restart. Like I said, I became a PT at 47. Well, I got sober at 40. I went back to uni at 41. Became a PT at 7.
Never too late,
Business
right?
coach at 50. Started triathlons at 48. And bought a tattoo business at 56. Don't have a tattoo business now. I'm doing other things now. Like remembering you're never too old to just change what you want to be or who you want to be or what you want to do. And I think that's a social thing that again, the story we've learned or we tell ourselves is that I'm too old now. You're not too old now. There's older people doing even more amazing things than me, in their 80s and in their 90s. So
there are some amazing 80-year-olds there for sure. As we start wrapping up, because before we run out of space on
memory
the recording,
space.
very quickly, what changes when someone stops performing wellness and starts responding honestly to what they need?
Probably chaos at the start. And be prepared for that, because people are always people are used to how you behave. So when you start changing, the people closest to you are either going to have to change themselves, which is like very challenging to them, or they're going to resist. So it's going to be chaotic. I remember when I got sober and then started working on stuff, some of my relationships were just like insane, because people were used to dealing with the old Caroline who just said yes, no, yes to everything, and never said she was upset, never did anything to, no, I don't want to do that. No, right? And then they'd get yelled at because they weren't used to that. So expect that it's going to be uncomfortable, but know that it's worth it to get through that. Nothing. Oh, no, I'm not going to say some things come to us with a little resistance and no challenge, but generally, like, again, embrace uncomfort, embrace being uncomfortable, and again, use those opportunities when you want to change. Use that as a great opportunity to see who other people really are.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to better yourself and other people aren't supporting you because of their own stuff, then maybe they're not the people to hang out with anymore. Yeah. Maybe they've served their part. And again, in life, things happen in life that works for us. We change. It doesn't work for us anymore. We move on. And life's always going to be like this continually changing little path that we're on. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the absolutely amazingly fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. I fully resonate with that, because, when you start putting boundaries in, especially if I'm thinking from a kid's perspective, when I've been like, okay, I'll make your lunch, and now I'm like, make your own lunch. They're like, what?
Yeah.
So, like, it's your turn, but like people really develop this expectation of what they think you are. And another thing that I find interesting, I grew up in a small town, and when I left that town, I was a teenager. I was, on the edge of naughty or whatever. And then when I go away and I come back, I feel like people still look at me as that person. And then when I'm not, they're like, oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So
but we go by familiarity and things, though. So, but
well, I often revert until I'm like, oh, what the hell?
All right. But if someone listening has been treating their symptoms as a proof of that they're actually failing, what is the one thing you'd like them to begin listening to today?
Okay, so Hey, there is no such thing as failure. We can't fail at anything. They're all just life experiences, and we learn a lot. Sometimes we don't learn, and we've got to get the same lesson 10 times over, whatever. But that's okay. Like, I just want people to go, like, if your body's feeling stressed and you're not feeling well, you're not motivated to do things, you're tired, you're exhausted all the time, just think about what changes you need to make and can make, and start, like I said, at the start with something small. Don't go, I'm going to go to the gym every day now for the next 3 months. Go, I'm going to go to the gym once this week for 30 minutes.
Yeah. Or I'm going to walk around the block for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Like, keep it small. Same, like if it's a meditation, start with 5 minutes whenever you can think about it. Just start implementing little things into your life, and know that, you're not a failure. Like, like I said, everyone is enough exactly as they are right now in this space. And just keep remembering that whatever happens in life, I think every human has intrinsic value.
Yeah, 100%.
And just remember that to someone, you're really important.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes a lot of people, through stress don't think that. And that's a really interesting thing, because we start to isolate and, but, there'd be someone or something, but even more so, be that to yourself. Be your biggest cheerleader. I love seeing people, and it's not about ego. It's, I learned a really interesting about humility rather than ego. Because, we're, again, socially thing, be humble. And I think Australia's really big on that, on the, like, don't say how good you are and things like that. But being humble actually means acknowledging what you're good at as well as what your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Right? And that's that inner strength of going, I am good at this. Like, you don't have to broadcast it to the world, or you can broadcast it to the world, whatever. Because also, just remember on that one that most people don't even really care. They're so worried and caught up in themselves that they're too busy worried about them to be worried about you. So you have to be your biggest cheerleader at the end of the day.
Cool.
And just, bring it back to, like, what do you want to be, on that headstone?
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Good point. Now, we like to ask our guests this question, just because of the name of our podcast, I guess. What does living unplugged mean for you in one sentence?
I was just going to say, be a fucking badass.
Love it.
That's a great one sentence.
Great answers.
Yes. I love that. That might be my favorite one so far. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing your wisdom and your vulnerability and your knowledge around this super important inner wealth topic. I believe we're hoping to share with our audience. So if people are listening and want to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
They can find me at www.carolinebellenger.com, my website, Instagram, Caroline Bellenger Official, Facebook, same, LinkedIn, or at the beach at Kira most mornings at 6 a.m.
I love that.
We'll put all your links in the show notes so people can also click there.
Reach out. I hope, like I said, I hope that, someone gets something out of it that just makes their life a little happier.
Let's hope so.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, this has been such an important conversation. And Caroline reminds us that stress isn't always a sign that we're weak or broken. Often it's just the body that's asking for the safety, support, and honesty. And in a world that pushes people to override themselves, learning to listen, regulate, and stay human may be one of the greatest forms of wealth we can build. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, stay curious, stay connected, and keep living unplugged as a badass.
Thank you, Caroline. Yeah, as a badass.
As a badass, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us on Vitalify Unplugged. If this episode sparked something in you, share it with a friend. Hit follow or subscribe. And don't forget, we love hearing from you. So send us a message and tell us what's lighting you up. See you in the next episode.